Hello everyone. Today, we will listen to a very touching story. When African swine fever was raging in Vietnam, Jack's hometown was also at risk of being lost. While the whole village was in despair, the young couple Jack and Tu Tien bravely stood up. They were not afraid of difficulties, not afraid of danger, ready to sacrifice themselves to protect each herd of pigs, each roof. This is not only a story about love between couples, but also about neighborly love, proving that when people are united, no hardship can defeat them. Let's follow this emotional journey together. That morning, the small village in the countryside still wore a familiar peaceful look. The winding dirt road leading into the village, on both sides were green rice fields, the smell of newly dried straw still lingering in the wind. People from old to young were busy in the yard, in the barn, taking care of the pigs, which were considered the valuable assets of each family. The sound of pigs squealing mixed with the sound of children playing, creating a vivid, peaceful picture to the point that no one could imagine that disaster was approaching. Suddenly, the commune loudspeaker blared loudly, breaking the peaceful atmosphere. Attention everyone, African swine fever has appeared in the neighboring commune, the risk of spreading very quickly. People are requested to increase their vigilance. In just a split second, the whole village seemed to be engulfed in a wave of panic. The men quickly dropped their hoes and ran back to the barn to check on the pigs. The women covered their faces and sobbed. Some sat down in the yard, shaking their heads and lamenting, "Oh my God. If the epidemic comes, our family will be gone." Fear was evident in everyone's eyes. The pigs, which were the hope for the whole year, had suddenly become a fragile burden that could be lost at any moment. In the midst of that scene, Jack and Tu Tien stood silently watching. They were a young couple who had just returned to the village not long ago. But their sincere hearts always made them feel troubled by the suffering of the villagers. Jack squeezed his wife's hand, his voice deep. "Tien, if this epidemic spreads, the whole village will suffer. We can't just stand by and watch." Tu Tien looked up, her eyes sparkling but determined. She nodded slightly, her voice full of confidence. "I believe we can do something. At least, we have to try, no matter how difficult it is." Their eyes met, silent but certain, while the whole village was in turmoil with fear. The image of the young couple was like a small ray of light. They did not know how difficult the road ahead would be, but their faith and love urged them not to falter. A journey full of sacrifice and courage was about to begin. In the afternoon, the drums of the communal house resounded loudly, calling all the villagers to gather. The communal house yard, which was usually filled with laughter, now had a strangely heavy atmosphere. Old and young, everyone was worried, their faces showing obvious anxiety. On the mats spread out in the middle of the yard, people sat in a circle, occasionally sighing. Some people whispered, "The epidemic has reached the neighboring commune. Will it be our turn sooner or later?" While everyone was still confused, Jack and Tu Tien stepped forward. Jack looked around, his eyes determined, his voice clear. "Dear villagers, we cannot sit around waiting for the epidemic to spread and then collapse. If we unite, we still have a chance to keep the pigs, keep food and life for the whole village." A murmur arose. A middle-aged man stood up, his voice somewhat harsh. "What do you young people know? The whole country is struggling because of this epidemic, let alone our village. It's easy to say, but can you do it?" A few others echoed, shaking their heads. "Disinfecting, dividing livestock areas, sounds good. But it takes a lot of effort and money. Where can poor families get the money to do it?" The atmosphere became even more tense. But Tu Tien stepped forward, her voice gentle but full of determination. "Folks, we don't dare say we are better than anyone else. But if we don't try, we will lose everything. We've spent our whole lives raising pigs. Can we just give up?" Having said that, Jack presented the plan in detail. Set up a sanitation checkpoint at the entrance of the village, so that anyone entering or leaving must disinfect. Organize teams to take turns spraying pesticides around the barns. Clearly divide the livestock areas to avoid cross-contamination. And also utilize folk remedies, guava leaves, garlic, ginger, to support the pigs' resistance. He spoke clearly, as if he had been troubled every night. The villagers were still hesitant. No one dared to nod. Suddenly, an old farmer with white hair and beard, a hunched back but bright eyes, slowly stood up. His voice was deep and firm. "I have raised pigs all my life, and I have never seen such a terrible epidemic. But I believe that only with faith can there be hope. If we do not listen to these children, we will have nothing left. Well then, let's bet on them for once." The whole village was silent for a moment. Then each small whisper gradually turned into a consensus. One person clapped, then two, and then the whole village echoed in unison. Okay, we will try. Jack and Tu Tien's eyes met. Filled with tears, they understood that this was just the beginning, and there were still many difficulties ahead. But at least, they had lit the fire of faith in everyone's hearts. And when the whole village was united, there was no challenge that could not be overcome. In the days after the meeting in the communal house yard, the whole village entered a real war. The peaceful atmosphere now became tense. Everyone was aware that just a small mistake could cause the whole village's efforts of many years to disappear. In the harsh sunlight of early summer, Jack struggled to carry each heavy bag of lime powder on his shoulder. Sweat streamed down his back, wetting his faded shirt, but he still patiently spread white streaks around the village roads and around the barns. Under his calloused hands, the white lime streaks were like protective arms, forming an invisible wall to prevent epidemics. People passing by, some hesitated, some were moved, whispering softly, "Jack is doing it as if he is saving the lives of the whole village." At the same time, Tu Tien crept through every small alley. She did not hesitate to roll up her sleeves, wade down to each household's pig pen, patiently instructing how to mix disinfectant, how to clean the feeding troughs, how to sprinkle lime powder evenly. Some villagers were initially hesitant, but seeing the young girl's dedication, everyone gradually followed suit seriously. Every time she passed a house, Tu Tien left behind the image of a brighter, cleaner barn than before, as if filled with new hope. At night, when all the houses had their lights on, Jack and Tu Tien still worked with the villagers to build fences around the village entrance. The sound of hammers, the sound of wood hitting each other, the flickering flashlights illuminating long shadows on the ground. There were nights when they stayed up all night, working and encouraging each other. "We must keep the village safe." However, human strength was limited. In the middle of a night shift, Jack suddenly felt dizzy, his shoulders trembled, and he collapsed next to the unopened lime bag. Tu Tien rushed forward in panic, quickly supporting her husband, her trembling hands wiping the sweat from his forehead. In an emotional voice, she whispered, "Just hang on a little longer, the whole village is counting on you." Jack opened his eyes slightly, forcing a weak smile. "As long as you are by my side, I will not collapse." Those words made Tu Tien's eyes blurred with tears, but they were also the fire that gave her strength and determination. While the whole village was trying to fight the epidemic, a terrible news came. A large outbreak occurred in the neighboring commune. Hundreds of pigs had to be destroyed. The whole village was immersed in extreme fear. The loudspeakers resounded, each word like a knife cutting into people's hearts. All households in Commune X must urgently bury their pigs to prevent the spread of the epidemic. The people turned pale, some burst into tears, some ran anxiously to check their pigs. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the sky was being pressed down by dark clouds. Will it be our turn? Will all this effort be in vain? These questions rang out continuously, making everyone's heart ache even more. Jack stood in the middle of the communal house yard, sweat and tears in his eyes, his hand tightly clasping Tu Tien's. They understood that the greatest challenge was approaching. In the worried eyes of the villagers, the image of the young couple once again became a support, a small but resilient candle, ready to burn itself out to light up the enveloping darkness. The night sky was dark. The wind blew in gusts, carrying torrential rain, pounding loudly on the tiled roofs, pouring down the village streets. The black water rolled into the drains, and soon overflowed the banks, rushing straight into the pig pens of several households. The risk of disease spreading through the dirty water was the most terrible thing that everyone feared. In the flash of lightning in the rain, Jack discovered that the water had begun to overflow the fence. Without thinking, he shouted loudly, "Don't let the water into the pen. Everyone, follow me." Jack and a group of village boys immediately rushed out. The slippery mud under their feet made each step like a battle. Tu Tien didn't hesitate either, rolling up her pants, wading into the rushing water, digging in the dirt with one hand, stacking sandbags with the other to block the flow. The sound of the rain drowned out the voices of people, but the determined eyes of the young couple still shone brightly in the dark night. Suddenly, Tu Tien slipped and fell flat into the ditch. Covered in mud, Jack rushed forward in panic, quickly pulling his wife up. Under the pouring rain, both of them were dirty from head to toe, their clothes soaked with water, their faces covered in mud. However, in that seemingly dangerous moment, they still managed to exchange a smile, a determined smile, as if to affirm that, no matter what, they would not give up. The people from inside the house looked out, choked with emotion. Without anyone telling them, each person took a hoe, shovel, and sack and rushed out into the rain, digging the ditch, building the bank. The whole village became a unified block, blending in with the sound of pouring rain and shouting to each other to work. Under the flash of lightning, the climax scene appeared, dozens of long silhouettes, mud splashing everywhere, hands holding each other to pass each bag of soil, each stone. Jack and Tu Tien stood at the end of the ditch, shoulder to shoulder, their hair tangled in the rain, their eyes burning with determination. That rainy night, the whole village was like a big family, together protecting the pigs, which was also protecting their livelihood and hope for survival. A few weeks passed. The atmosphere of mourning gradually subsided. The name, African swine fever, no longer sowed fear in every house. The pig pen still echoed with the bustling squealing. The healthy pigs frolicked as if no epidemic storm had ever passed. Everyone in the village breathed a sigh of relief, both happy and grateful. One early morning, the communal house yard was bustling with people again. People gathered, setting up a simple but affectionate meal, a bowl of soup, a plate of vegetables, a country chicken, all neatly placed on the mat in the middle of the yard. It was not a lavish feast, but a meal filled with gratitude. Everyone looked at the young couple with eyes full of respect. An old farmer with white hair stepped forward. His voice trembled, tears welled up in the corners of his eyes. "Right finger, if it weren't for you two, we would have nothing. You saved this village." That moment made Tu Tien unable to hold back. Tears fell down. She bowed her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. Jack quietly reached out to hold his wife's hand, transmitting to her steadfastness. He smiled, not a proud smile for himself, but a smile of shared happiness, happiness knowing that human love is still there. Brighter than all fears, the panoramic view of the countryside in the morning sunlight. Green fields stretching out, roofs looming in the thin smoke from the kitchen. A herd of fat pigs happily squealed, like a peaceful song after a storm. Jack put his hand on Tu Tien's shoulder, whispering, "Right finger, it's not just us who saved the village, but the love of the village and neighbor that saved everything." The story carries the message: when people know how to love and share, no disease can defeat them. Herb sparkles.